Hi everyone, welcome to season 3 and our very first season as Body Peace.
We're so glad you're here as we begin this new chapter.
I'm Jennie Kramer.
And I'm Nina Manolson.
If you've been with us since the beginning, you'll remember we started as Her Story on a Plate, exploring food, bodies, and culture. But no matter the topic, we always came back to the same thing, our relationship with our bodies.
So it made sense to make our name reflect what we were truly talking about, body peace. This is the heart of our work, supporting you in navigating life in a body you may not always like or respect, especially in a culture that's often critical and demanding, and learning how to build a relationship with your body that's kind, respectful, and real.
Each episode brings honest conversations with each other and with our guests about self-image, societal expectations, aging, diet culture, and the deep healing that happens when we come home to ourselves.
You'll hear personal stories and clinical insights that invite you to feel seen, supported, and gently encouraged on your own body peace journey.
We're so glad you've joined us. Welcome to Body Peace. Hi, everybody. Today we are talking about stepping on the scale. To step or not to step? That is the question.
That is the question. And it's an important question. And we're going to dive in today to 3 basic issues in that theme. The first being, what's the emotional impact of stepping on the scale? And then also, how do we navigate that in medical settings when our doctor, our nurse, whoever is saying, why don't you step on? Just hop on the scale. How do we navigate that? And what are the times that we actually do? We will want to step on the scale because it's important and it will impact our care and treatment. And the other thing is, how do we create a relationship, a supportive, healthy, nourishing, positive relationship with our body that isn't dependent on a number? So, step or not to step?
I'm sure to step or not to step. I'm sure this comes up with your clients all the time. I know it comes up with mine every
All the
single
time.
day. And it's important to say that there may or may not be just a few medical exceptions where a shift in your weight is something that one needs to know. But for the most part, it doesn't make sense that it's become part of just the routine. We need to know your blood pressure and your heart rate. Oh, and by the way, your weight. They're not the same. And
They're
so,
not.
and I anticipate that some who are listening are going to think we've lost our minds, and we haven't. Because think about your own relationship to when you step on a scale. Forget about a medical setting for the moment. Think about what it feels like when you step on the scale, if you do, in your own home. So either you're possibly weighing yourself every day, or you won't go near it, not because you have a position about it, but because you're afraid of it, right? Or it has the potential to determine your entire self-worth in your mind.
Right. And Jenny, you know how we always talk about body autonomy, right? This is my body. I get to make choices. I get to decide what I want and what's going on for me and, how I do body in this life. The scale, to me, fundamentally undermines body autonomy. Because here I am having this relationship with my body. I'm feeling whatever way. And then I step on the scale. I step on this mechanical device and I'm saying, here, you tell me how I feel about myself. And suddenly we've given up all agency.
And it's so interesting that it's very intergenerational. You and I both, work with folks that are certainly adolescent, adult, older, middle adult, older adult, and it's the same story. Now, it's important to say this is a human phenomenon, but it's most definitely a female phenomenon. Of course,
Well,
it's not to say
yeah,
men don't, but
right.
mostly women have been, trained to think that thinner is better, thinner is smarter, thinner is
God.
more disciplined, thinner is prettier. It's just the way one wants to be. And why we're talking about this is that it also becomes, well, thinner is healthier. And that's really
Right.
the heart of the matter.
It is, but it's thinner is healthier, but thinner, it's not. When I hear my clients talk, the external wording is I want to be healthy. But underneath that is why do I want to lose weight? Well, yes, because I want to be healthy, but also because of the promise of everything else that goes with if my weight is down, if the scale shows that I have dropped weight, then somehow I am a better human. Somehow I am more worthy. Somehow people will love me more. Somehow I will have more success. And so we really have to look at what are we asking the scale to tell us.
Mm.
And that's an important actual intervention that we can do before, if we're like, oh my gosh, I got to weigh myself. Well, exactly am I asking this metal thing to tell me? That I'm a good person, that I'm worthy of love, or that I'm a bad person? And then I should start restricting and I should feel bad about myself because really I didn't literally measure up.
So if you're driving while you're listening to us, you probably want to pull over for a moment because you might, have a little accident. Hear this. Weight and body size does not determine whether you are, quote, healthy. And you are free to
Mm-hmm.
disagree with this statement, but consider this for a moment. There are people that walk into an orthopedist's office with knee pain, and they say, I have knee pain. And if they are in a larger body, one of the first things the orthopedist may say and is likely to say, well, there are some things we can do, but by the way, one thing you want to do is certainly drop X amount of pounds because it's just a matter of physics. And to that I say, if you are ever told that, what you might want to say back is, okay, and if I had this exact same knee pain, I was in a much smaller body, what would you tell me then? And let's work with that first.
Yep. In Christy Harrison's book, the Anti-Diet book, she literally tells the story that proves exactly what you're saying, which is that a daughter and a father went into to get their, I think it was their shoulder checked. And the daughter was given PT and the father was told to lose weight. Same issue.
Well, here's another example which I think is much more perilous, which is that there are people that have walked into medical settings who have lost some precipitous amount of weight without effort. And instead of the medical question being, huh, let's try to figure out how
Mm-hmm.
that happened, they get
Right.
applause. And they said, oh, good start. And because it's not really taken seriously, unfortunately, that has led to many, many serious diagnoses that could
Yeah.
have been caught much earlier. And that
Yep.
is weight stigma in the medical setting. Let's be clear, not every doctor is a bad person. Of course not. Everybody knows what they know, and they don't know they don't even know what they don't know. But
Yep.
to immediately think that weight loss is a good thing is a mistake.
So let's get into the medical thing and then we'll loop back to how do you actually not weigh yourself if that's the habit, if that's what you've gotten into, and we'll get into that in a moment and body checking and all that. But suppose, and let me tell you a story. I started in with a new primary doctor. I go to her office. This is a true story. I go into her office and her medical assistant says, hop on the scale. I say, I don't weigh myself. She goes, no problem, which was to her credit. She goes, okay.
It's not that they got smart about health at every size and weight stigma. They figured out it's not worth the fight. And so,
Right.
in many places, if you say that, they're like, okay, sure, all right, I won't
Right.
upset you, but at some point,
Right.
they make you later. Yeah.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
then I saw the doctor and she looks at my file and she goes, so it says here you refuse to be weighed. And I said, that's correct. I don't believe that weight is a measure of my health. And she was like, yes, but what about? And then she started to like hammer hard about all the ways that I would need to weigh myself. So one of the things she said, what if you have a heart issue? I was like, well, actually, if I have congestive heart failure and this is a concern, feel free to weigh me to make sure that my fluids are actually leaving my body in the way that they're supposed to. She was like, yes, but what about if you're going to surgery? And I was like, if I'm about to enter into surgery, please, we'll have that conversation and you can weigh me. But right now, I don't have congestive heart failure. We are not walking into surgery. I am just meeting you for the first time and I have other health concerns I'd like to discuss with you. Now, that was not the greatest way to start a relationship with a new primary doctor.
Hmm.
So what happens is that trying to stand up for what feels right for me. Because one of the ways that and this conversation I've had for many years with different doctors, but one of the ways that I absolutely end the conversation with doctors that won't back up is I say, your prime directive is to do no harm. Me getting on a scale is going to do harm. It will kick up old issues I have around what that number means. And then I will end up in a cycle of feeling like, am I okay? And it
how do they
will.
react to
Then they're like,
response?
well, once I'm now into the emotional, psychological realm, they usually are like, well, I have to write down that you refused. And I was like, be my guest.
Right. And that's,
Again, is that how I want to have a relationship with a primary care doctor? No.
but you see, that's also a bigger story, right? They have to write down that you said no. Why? Because
Insurance.
if something ever happens, oh, it wasn't my fault. She wouldn't let me weigh her, as if that's going to have a very big impact on your case. Let's be
Mm-hmm.
clear. Again, what did you just say? If you know you're having a procedure and you're going to need anesthesia, then there's a good chance you need to be weighed because that's sort of what goes into the calculation, rightly or wrongly. If you've had a precipitous loss that you didn't have anything to do with, for sure, you want to have now a baseline and to see if that precipitous loss continues, and there should be curiosity about why there is that loss. Also, in the case of congestive heart failure, which I hope is not the case for anyone listening, your body can fill with fluid. So they need to see if that's what's happening. The other thing that I'm not sure we mentioned is when you go for a
DEXA.
bone density DEXA scan, right? Apparently, it's part of the calculation, whether it should or not, that's not for us to say, but it is
But
part of the calculation, right?
and that was an interest. That was something I didn't know. So when I went for my first DEXA scan, she was like, "Can you hop on the scale?" And I was like, um, "No."
Mhm.
And she was like, "I really need you to. I need your weight." And I was like, "But I don't weigh myself." And she was like, "No, it's literally part of the calculation of how we do bone density."
But there's another thing to say here. If you are someone who really gets affected by knowing the number, and we have to obviously give equal measure to those who must know the number, but if you are
Mhm.
one of the ones who doesn't want to know the number, and then you have successfully in that medical setting made sure that you don't step on a scale, right? Please also be careful about when you do step on the scale for one of those conditions we just said, because if you don't want to know the number, you still don't have to know it, but they tend to plant it all over your portal, all over the
Mhm.
paperwork that you leave with. So you
Mhm.
have to sort of just be alert that that's what's going to happen, and hope that either you don't see it if it affects you, or that you can just see it and let the number go.
Yeah.
Um,
And I've heard that the stories around my clients saying, I don't want to know. You can weigh me, but I don't want to know. So then the medical assistant weighs, writes it down, turns the paper over. Then the doctor comes in and goes, oh, it looks like you lost 5 pounds. Good for
right.
you. And they're like, seriously? Seriously?
Even that statement you just made,
Good
you
for
lost
you.
5 pounds,
Hmm.
good for you. That means
That's the
you are
moral
good
judgment.
because you lost 5 pounds. Not,
Yes.
huh, I wonder what that's about.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And this idea that, again, when we're choosing out of the medical environment, when we're choosing to get on a scale, are we looking for that inanimate object
Sure.
made of metal and electronics to tell us, good job, and pat us on the head like we are, oh, yay, you're going in the right direction. Yay for you.
Now, it's important to say that, we also both work with folks that suffer with what we're going to call anorexic behaviors or anorexic thinking. And in those cases, when there really continues to be a precipitous loss, it's because, there's restriction that's happening. And at some point, there is this moment where the height to weight ratio is really, really, really becoming a dangerous thing. And then in a dietitian's office, in the correct setting, that has to be monitored from time to time. And certainly in the case of an adolescent, that also has to be measured. But by the way, that's when blind weights can be done. Because if you're trying to treat some younger person who's really trying to not have this be the core of their lives for the rest of their lives. You have to develop a very different relationship with the scale. And so sometimes a blind weight is the way to go. There are times when it isn't. I mean, this is the art and the science, but there are times that it isn't. For instance, there are people who suffer with anorexic thinking who also have OCD issues. And the OCD is so overwhelming that to know can be overwhelming or to not
Mhm.
know can be overwhelming. And you have to really handle that on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that weaves us into this whole behavior around body checking, right? I need to know. I need to get on the scale every day. And I hear that piece a lot from clients who say, well, it keeps me in check. It tells me if I'm sort of in the right zone, right? It tells me if I can relax, with my eating or if I have to be very tight. It becomes this external controlling factor. And it's a way that they're monitoring, self monitoring. And my perspective and experience clinically is that that self monitoring ends up being a very critical voice and is very harmful, deeply harmful to our sense of worth, our sense of enoughness, as well as a sense of, you know what, I am worthy outside of this corporeal form that I have. I am a human.
You also said something interesting, right? Which is if I want to have a good relationship with food, well, let's talk about what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Am I having a good relationship with food this week because when I got on the scale, I
Mm-hmm.
lost weight, or because I hadn't gained weight, or oh, I need to know what my zone is? If you want to know what your zone is, then pay attention to hunger cues, pay attention to satiety cues. Our bodies are meant to move them in whatever way you see fit, if you can and when you can. And that's your relationship with your body. Now, I hear you when you say, oh, no, but I have to know because if I'm more
Mm-hmm.
than, 5 pounds out of my range, well, that could become 15 and that could be 30. And at least when I know it's 5, what happens when it's 5? What does that mean? Oh, now I'm going to be good. Now I'm going to restrict. That's
Yep.
not a relationship with food and body. That's a relationship with numbers and with the scale.
Yes. And that's so important. I just want to highlight that.
Yeah.
What are you being in relationship with? Are you being in relationship with your body and how you feel? Or are you being in relationship with a number that is a determinant of worth?
You can imagine what some people are thinking while they're hearing this, right? These broads are nuts. These broads are nuts. How could they possibly think that I'm not going to step on the scale?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't step on the scale, I'm going to become someone who's in this really larger body and I won't be comfortable and I won't be pretty and I won't be happy and oh,
Mm-hmm.
I won't be healthy.
Yep. And my inquiry would be, are there times where you get on the scale and it says, you know what, you're doing great. And then there's a part of you that goes, great, I don't have to restrict anymore. And suddenly you're like, oh, I can eat whatever I want. And you're like, what the heck happened? Right? Are you in a yo-yo because of what the scale is saying?
And this leads us to something else, which I think is very much related. And you and I have been talking about this, which is something called body checking. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there's a big continuum of body checking, but certainly in its most recognizable form, um, it's not only weighing yourself, but it's like things like, oh, how do my rings feel on my finger today? Oh, is any of my other jewelry, looser today? Oh, how do I look in a mirror? How do I look in a store window as I'm passing by? When I
Mm-hmm.
sit down, how do my thighs look? Um,
Hmm. When
how,
I sit down,
yeah,
how much of my fat can I pinch? I hear that a lot from
yes.
women.
Yes. And so it's time to get curious about what all that means. What does it mean? Oh, if I have fat that's pinchable and I have thighs that I don't like and I have, rings that don't fit the way I would like them to, or clothing that doesn't fit the way I would like it to, what does that mean? It means that your clothing isn't fitting the way you'd like it to and your rings are not fitting the way you'd like them to, and be curious about it. Not make it like, well, this is the mission. Now I have to lose weight because if I don't, that will mean that I have failed. I have
Yep.
failed in my looks. I have failed in my health. Not true.
And I think it's really important to frame body checking as an abusive behavior. It's an abusive behavior with ourselves because what are we doing? We're pinching ourselves. What are we doing? Looking in the mirror and judging. What are we doing? Getting on the scale every day. And what does that do? Create an inner conversation that is aggressive. And do we want to be in an abusive relationship with anybody, especially ourselves?
Such a great question, Nina. Such a great question. I will say it's important to mention there's a little exception to this. Sometimes body checking is, especially in younger folks, it's really a sign of OCD or obsessive
Mhm.
compulsive disorder. And it's sensorial and it has more to do with sensory issues. But again, that has to get evaluated because if that's not the case, and I always hope it isn't, because then it's much more compulsive. But if that's not the case, then you have the freedom to really be very curious about it and say, well, all right, how much time does this actually take out of my day every single day? Because think about it. It's not just the weigh-in. It's not just the body checking. It's the evaluations that we make on ourselves when we hop on that scale and it's not the number we wanted it to be. It changes what you wear that day. How many times have you heard our clients say, I'm late everywhere. I have to try on 12 things before I can walk out the
Mhm.
door?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that whole like spinning with thought about our body, spinning of, food, of weight, of appearance, it is a time drain. And to look at where am I investing my time and energy, right? Really zoom out from this issue to how do I, just like we think about our money, where am I spending? Am I spending on shoes every single day? Or do I want to spend a little bit on shoes and a little bit on, you know, saving and a little bit on food and a little, but if I'm spending all my energy, all my investment of my just core life force
Right.
on obsessing about my body, oh my gosh, it's exhausting, one. And two, what's the point? I've literally had clients say when they've really unpacked how much of their life they've invested in dieting, in hating themselves, saying, with that amount of energy, I could have figured out how to feed a small village in Africa.
So I think we convinced them. And now the question is, maybe we did. No, maybe we did. Maybe we didn't. But let's say we did. So what do we do about this?
Yeah.
My first thought is to take a breath, seriously to take a breath and to ask yourself, okay, how has my body served me? Let me take pen to paper or thumb to keyboard, whatever is your thing, but let me take pen to paper and figure out over the course of my life, however old or young I am, when has my body served me?
Mhm.
Has it been in a medical situation? Has it been as an athlete? Has it been in any one of many, many different ways? Have I
Has
been
it been
fortunate
getting
enough?
up in the morning and still being able to
Mhm.
pee and stand up out of bed and
Yeah.
have my heart beating? It doesn't have to be major.
Has my body withstood trauma
Mhm.
in some way? And I'm still here.
Yeah.
Has my body, perhaps if you are female and if this is something you wanted, was I able to birth children? And even
Yep.
if I have not birthed children, can I honor the beauty of this body, the way it's created, that it
Hmm.
can, that it can for
Mhm.
many.
Yep.
Just to think about all the ways in which that body has really, really served you
Yeah.
before you go beating the hell out of it, to
Yep.
just over the course of your lifespan to say, where has it served me?
I also think to really be able to catch that moment can help. Oh, I want to go weigh myself, right? And there's two things I recommend in those moments. One is a little bit amusing. I'll say that in a second. But the first is, oh, I just name it. I want to weigh myself. I am trying to check something. And coming back, how do I feel in this moment? Come back to yourself. Because again, just like we started, we're taking the locus of control out of ourselves and putting it on a mechanical, electronic thing. Bring it back to yourself. What do I feel right now? How am I doing? The other thing that just delays that experience of, I think I'm going to go weigh myself, and this is, I know scales have changed in shape and size and dimensions, but literally take whatever is sitting on your bathroom floor or wherever it is, put it in a plastic bag, tie 2 knots around it. This is if you can't toss your scale. If you're not willing to just let it go and not have it in your house at
Yep.
all, take the scale, put it in a bag, 2 knots. Take that bag with the 2 knots, knot side down, put it in another bag, 2 knots. Okay. Now, that double bagged 4 knots, that package you're going to take and you're going to put it in your garage or your attic or
Mm.
your basement. And then when you're like, I got to weigh myself, you have a little time. You've got to like, okay, where did I put that again? Okay, now I got to go. Now I got to untie all those knots. And in that time, it gives you a little space, a little buffer to go, why am I weighing myself? What am I hoping that scale's going to tell me? That I'm a good human being? I can tell you right now, you are a good human being.
My experience tells me they will remember exactly where they put the scale, but it's but it's a matter of whether they're willing to go to the trouble
Right.
of unwrapping it. Another thing that some people do is if they really don't want to throw out a good scale, this is their phrase, a good scale, um, I have a closet of them in my office. I actually
Mm,
hold scales
that.
for people, and at some point, actually, I have to say most times they haven't asked for them back. I should have a sale somewhere because I literally have a closet of scales, and I
That's
say, "I'll hold it
great.
for you. You can have it back anytime you want. I've no questions asked." But because it's being held,
Mhm.
my presumption is they didn't go out and get another one, but okay, I might be wrong about that. But if you're gonna bother to ask me to hold it, I'm assuming you didn't spend money on another one. Um, the other thing to think about here is I always like the word titration or
Mhm.
exposure. If it sounds utterly ridiculous and radical for you to just stop weighing yourself, so work your way to it. If you're someone, for instance, who weighs yourself every single day, or in some cases more than once a day, consider just weighing yourself maybe once a week for a month and just to see how that feels. And I am a very big believer in journaling. Some people think it's a pain in the neck. I think it's some of the most useful ways you can
Yep.
spend your thoughts and your soul. And while you're sitting with the the 5 minutes of, but I can't not weigh myself. I have to weigh myself. Just put it to paper. Just write down, what does it mean for me to be weighing myself? Why does it feel so painful not to? What is the knowledge I think I have to get? Is it really going to be any different than what I knew yesterday?
Mhm. And it's an interesting thing because in that, what you might find is, I want to know where I'm at. I want to know how I'm doing. So great. Ask yourself, how am I doing?
Mm,
What
hmm
is how do I feel? How am I feeling in my body? Am I having a difficult body day? Because they happen. They happen when we get, body image threats from our culture,
Yes.
because we walked into the gym and there was a scale there, the place where we want to go and be in our body and relax and get moving in the way that feels good. And then you come out and take a shower and there's a scale, and that's a body image threat. This is something that is activating me.
Mhm.
Oh gosh, I got to get on the scale because that's telling me, am I healthy? Am I not healthy? Wait a second. How do I feel?
Also, it's part of our culture, right? I mean, if you're going to a medical setting, we'll come back to that, and that is the first question you are asked, well, then you're led to believe, oh, I guess it's important. I really should know. Except for the cases that we've said, which is anesthesia, a DEXA scan for bone density, or if you have congestive heart failure, or something where you've had some precipitous weight loss, there really is no reason to weigh you. It's not the issue. There are other ways to see if your body's doing what it needs to do. And maybe that's through lab work, and maybe that's through an EKG, maybe that's through any number of different things. But weighing has such weight attached to it. It has so much
Mm-hmm.
meaning,
It
and
does.
it just perpetuates diet culture in the worst way.
Yeah. It does, and it becomes the goal. And so my invitation is to inquire within yourself is, what is my goal? Is my goal to feel agile? Is my goal to feel energetic? Is my goal to have more vitality in life, more mobility in life, right? Because weight and the number on the scale and our sense of weight loss and all of that, those are false goals that the culture has given us, as
Yes.
though that's going to give us everything that we really want. Let's go under the goal of what the number of the scale is. Let's go under the goal of weight loss and look at what's truly important to us. Let's get back to our values, not the value that a society has said, this scale is really important. You'll buy the scale and then you'll buy the diet, and then you can contribute to the $72 billion diet industry. Yay, we got you.
Nina, I want to go back to a point that you made earlier before we end, which was about body autonomy. It's a phrase that's thrown around a lot, and I think it has a lot of importance. Certainly in the times in which we find ourselves right now, there are women that don't have body autonomy, especially where termination of her pregnancies is concerned. But when we use the word body autonomy, what we're talking about is that if you stop for a moment, you do have the ability to make your own choices, whatever those are. If you decide, I want to go on a diet, God bless, go do that, and just stay curious about why. And think about, do I have a history of dieting? Have I dieted before? How has that turned out? How has it worked
Yeah.
out? What's my up and down about that? And
Yep.
how do I get off that merry-go-round? How do I get off that roller coaster? Well, part of it we're suggesting is to step off the scale and just see if you can have the experience of being in your body, which allows you to address a hunger cue and address a satiety cue. And I'll tell you something, if you leave with nothing else today, eat what you want, but do it slowly. I promise you that when you eat slowly, there's no good food, bad food, unless you happen to be allergic to something. But if you eat slowly, you will come back to your own intuition, your own intuitive eating, your own hunger and satiety. Then you get to choose whether you want to address those cues or not. But that, to me, makes much more sense than hopping on the scale every day and having it ruin your day because of some meaning that you attach to it.
There it is.
And there it is.
And there
So
it is.
we leave you with the question once again, because we just love the phrase, to step or not to step. That is the question.
And to not step it, to me, is the
Yes.
answer.
Yes. We'll see you all next time. Thanks for being with us. We're so glad you joined us on this episode of Body Peace.
Stay connected as we continue exploring what it means to live in your body with more ease, trust, and care by subscribing to Body Peace on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen.
Be sure to visit us at bodypeacepodcast.com for special bonus content for those on our mailing list.